Okay, I'm going to call the February 17th, 2022 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. We're going to take things a little out of order, actually, so we're going to take up first the Abington Investments LLC 1015 Plymouth Street Comprehensive Permit dated November 19th, 2019. The request for modification, and the board is to determine if the proposed modifications are substantial or insubstantial.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
We'll get set up here. So maybe just in the interest of time, we'll get started while Gary sets up the plans. Give you a minute just to at least get the tripods ready. For the record, my name's Dan Bailey. I'm an attorney for the project. Some of you have seen me before because I was here when this project was first permitted before the board. I'm an attorney with land use attorney with Pierce Atwood in Boston. With me tonight is Gary Kane, who is from the architectural team. He is the architect for the project. We had a prior architect the previous time we were here, but we engaged Gary to help us with some value engineering and some other changes, and he will go through those in a couple of minutes. We've also got Glenn and Glenn LaPointe here. They're the owners of Abington Investments, and our affordable housing consultant, Sean Carpenter, is in class and may make it and may not. What we're here for tonight is to request that the changes proposed to this project on Plymouth Street are insubstantial and therefore do not require a public hearing. I'll briefly describe, just touch on the changes. Then Gary will give you some more details, and then I'll get into some of the, sort of the legal issues. So this is a 144 unit, age restricted, ages 62 plus, multifamily development with 218 parking spaces. The plans have been revised to make the layout more efficient and affordable to construct. And with that, I'll let Gary walk you through the details on the changes.
It's okay if I speak out here, everyone can hear me fine?
You have to.
It's for the TV, so.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. I'm Gary Kane with the architectural team. So I'll start with the building and then go to the site, because it's the building that we've changed, which is primarily initiating the change. When it was first submitted, we had two buildings, if you recall, that were connected by a bridge with a pass under. What we've done is we've just combined the buildings into one single building. We've gotten rid of the drive-through.
The hardest part is
We removed the drive under and combined them into one, and taken the center of the building. You can see here on the plan, and we've just combined the amenity area right into where the drive-through was, condensed the amenity area and the entrances to the middle, creating a sort of front entrance and a back entrance to the parking lot. And in addition to that, we've added a third entrance. We've added a third entrance on the the upper left hand from here, which is closest to the senior center, that's just we were just trying to distribute the entrances around the building. We've got parking around all three sides. We don't have the drive-through. We're just trying to distribute three entrances to the building within decent proximity to all the parking spaces. So, as Dan mentioned, the unit count has not changed. The bedroom count has increased from, it was initially 176, and we're at 216. We essentially took, it was always one bedrooms and two bedrooms, and we took them, and we have 72 one bedrooms and 72 two bedrooms. So that brings us to, that gives us the 216 bedroom count. What that does is, to the square footage of the building, it increases, we're just under 150,000 square feet, which is about just under 10% of what the original square footage was. Looking at the site, we have the two site plans. This one came from where? So on the right-hand side here is the new site plan. On the left is the older site plan. There isn't a lot of changes to the site. Sean Hardy has basically taken our footprint. As I said, the square footage has gone up a little bit, so our footprint has grown. Our parking, it's essentially the same. I think we have one more parking space. He was able to sort of rework the site where he picked up an additional parking space to the 118. He's redistributed the accessible parking spaces. As I mentioned, we have 3 entrances for even distribution, so he's just moved some of the accessible parking spaces around so that we've got them at each of those 3 entrances. The turning radius at the front, which I believe is the fire department had requested, has remained the same. There's no changes to that. And I guess the key point is that the land disturbance has remained unchanged. Sean was able to sort of rework the plan to not increase any of the disturbance. And then lastly, I'll just talk about the elevations. Basically the building design. I guess we can show that. And you can also just show, this was the rendering that was the initial submission. There were some elevations, and I would say that the initial design that when it was approved when you saw it 2 years ago, I'd say that the site plans were at a schematic design level. The elevations were, I think, a little bit more conceptual. We've taken and sort of brought the elevations up to, we've changed the building a little bit. We've reduced the first floor plan. There was a very tall first floor in order to be able to drive under the bridge. So we've brought that elevation down. We've reduced the size of the roof. There was just a very large hip roof covering the whole building, almost like a 12-12 pitch that was very, very tall. We've lowered that down, just brought the height of the building down a little bit. We've created some flat areas where we'll put all the mechanical equipment evenly distributed across the roof. And we've just essentially added a little bit more level of design, added some bays at the living rooms, try to break up the scale. And essentially that's the extent of the changes. I'll turn it back to Dan.
I guess at this point, maybe if the board has any questions, for Gary from an architectural perspective, this would be a good time.
Any questions from any members of the board?
With adding the extra bedrooms and not increasing parking, is that going to create any issues? Because people usually, they have another bedroom, another person, they want parking.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, I'd say absolutely. But this is a age-restricted project, so everybody that lives there is going to be 62 and over. And what I've learned, and Gary has taught me a little bit, is that a lot of the 2 bedrooms are occupied by a single occupant. And that single occupant only has 1 car. And I can speak from personal experience because my mother lives in a similar project in Norwood, and she has 1 car, and she has several friends there. And they're in 2 bedrooms because the units are not that big. So when someone's coming out of a house, as they often are, having that extra bedroom just to have the space is very convenient. Normally 40 more bedrooms, there'd be more occupants if it was a typical development. But that's not what we expect to see in a senior development.
Any other questions from the board?
Why'd you get rid of the bridge?
I think the building works better, as I don't think it's quite necessary. I think the building works better and it's more efficient by pulling it in and condensing it. The bridge created, there was sort of community space or extra space at either end of the bridge that was inefficient, and so from a square footage standpoint, it was just less efficient. And by pulling it together, and we basically have a single loaded corridor that sort of connects it, I think it just works. It works just cleaner that way.
Wasn't there a throughway?
And there was a driveway that passed
There's a throughway
underneath.
there.
That's correct.
So my concern was before, when I saw this change, was the fire department, if they are at the back of the building. I always thought that throughway there was gonna be used, so they didn't have to back out of the back parking lot. Is there gonna be still room enough for them to move their
So the-
apparatus around the back of the building?
So around the back of the building, the driveway loops around, so.
So there
in
is.
the- Yeah, so in the front, you've
gonna
got
be
the
room
large
for them to
radius.
drive around.
That's right, and Sean did the turning radiuses, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share them. But you can basically drive around that loop, so it's not like driving into a dead end and having to back up.
Right, want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was something that we spent a lot of time on in the original permitting. And, you know, I
Right.
see the chief's here, so I'm sure we'll hear from him on it. But we haven't changed, you know, what was approved in terms of circulation around the building.
Anything else from the board at this
So,
point?
so you're saying that this is not going to be opened up for people under 18, correct?
Well, we're asking for a change, you know, what the condition says right now is no one under 18 can be there. What we'd ask for is a more typical condition, which says something like, you know, no one under 18 can live there, but they can be occasional visitors.
Anything else from the board? And then I'm going to see if there's anybody else.
I just had a quick question.
Go ahead.
Did the height of, I wasn't here for the first time you guys
Yeah.
went through. Did the height of the, I know you said the first floor height changed, but did the height of the overall building change?
Yeah, as far as I could tell from the original drawings, there was, from the original final site plan, there was a height elevation of 46 feet, which is to the sort of the median point of the ridge, of the old ridge. I don't know how they had actually calculated the elevations on the design, because the elevations were never revised from the original pass-through, and I think maybe there was conversation about changing the building, but the height that we're showing here is the same approved, which was 46 feet, which is, we've shown to the median height of the ridges, plate to the ridge.
Amy?
I'm completely confused by that answer. So the question was, did the height change? Is that, it's a kind of a yes or no?
The
Did
height
not-
of the
did
height of the
not.
building.
Okay, thank you, okay.
Anybody else as far as the board goes at this point? If not, I'm going to open up to the public. Anybody from the public? Chief?
I just want to withhold any comments on this one. This is the first time seeing this tonight, so we haven't had a chance to review this. So, you know, either pro, con, or anything like that, I just have nothing yet until we've had a chance to do this.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public? If not, I'm going to bring it back to the board. And if, Amy, you could just explain what our role is here.
Sure, so
Tonight.
they've requested a modification, so under the regulations, we had to open this within 20 days, which we did, which is tonight. And then tonight, you determine if it's insubstantial, and that means that it's over, they can make all the changes they want, or if it's substantial. And really, the decision is within your discretion. The regulations do provide for certain changes that are automatically deemed substantial and automatically deemed insubstantial. And so the regulations provide that if there's a reduction of 10% of the bedrooms, it's insubstantial. Here, they're increasing the bedrooms by 40, which is approximately 25% of an increase. So I would recommend that this is a substantial modification, which means that within 30 days, we hold a public hearing. And at that public hearing, we would then, the chief could weigh in, he would have time to weigh in. We would have our peer reviewer review the changes to make sure that they're in compliance with his final approval of the entire project, which was a while ago.
Yep.
So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I have a question procedural. It's okay for the two new members to vote on this?
Yes.
Even though they
Yes,
are-
and then again, if it's a substantial modification, it's a public hearing, so, you guys have time to review the file, review the changes, and,
Okay.
but yes, we have no choice because
Right.
members change.
Members
So,
change.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question that the rules are about changes. They don't address Chief Nuttall's concerns at all, like the traffic pattern changes. That we can't make that determination as substantial.
Well, once we make the determination as I agree. all in all, it's a substantial change. I don't think there's any question. We have the redesign of buildings, you know, and we don't know if the turn radiuses work or not without Sean and Chief Nuttall okaying it. So there's definitely substantial changes here. A lot of times, if there's a shift in bedroom counts, there's no shift in the building or the layout or anything like that. But here, there's both.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we find this project that, owned by Abington Investments LLC at 1015 Plymouth Street as proposed, comprehensive permit dated 11/19/2019. Request to be modified, that we find it to be substantial change.
Okay. Which would trigger a public hearing, correct?
Which will-
yes.
Right.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second
There's
that.
a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you. We'll
Okay.
see you in a month or so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the petition of limited dividend affiliate of WP East Acquisition for 0 Summer Street, assesses map 24 and 17, lots 112 and 11A, and that's a continuance of the 40B hearing that we had back about a month ago. So if you want to come forward, sir, and
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mark Seck. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, WP East Acquisitions LLC. I'm joined by Phil Cordero with Allen and Major, they're our civil engineer. Also, our other members of the team, Debbie Horwitz, who's our legal counsel, Liz Oldman, our traffic consultant, Mike Bennett, the architect on the deal, and Jim Lambert, the managing director of Wood Partners. We are here tonight, as you know, this is our second meeting. We met back in December. We were continued until February to give Sean and Tetra Tech a chance to start their peer review. I'm going to leave it up to you, Chairman, and the board, how you want tonight to kind of go. We've received some feedback from Sean. We're here to address some of his questions. But I'm going to really leave it up to you how you want us to move forward.
Sean, do you mind if we turn it over to you and you can go through your report?
Not at all.
Okay. Why don't we do
Is
it
it
that
okay if
way?
I stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, thank you.
For those who don't recall, I'm Sean Reardon. I'm with Tetra Tech. We're a civil engineering firm out of Marlborough, Mass. We're here serving primarily as the ZBA's technical reviewer, assisting you guys with some of the technical stuff. Part of that process is we take a look at the plans, we take a look at the stormwater narrative and the stormwater report, all the other supporting documentation, and provide our insight as to what we think might need a little bit more work, what we think is well done, and try to sort of progress towards a better designed, a better servicing project. So as Mark mentioned, we did get the plans, we did have an opportunity to take a look at it. I've issued a comment letter. Our comment letter didn't address traffic. There was a bit of confusion as to whether we were doing that, but I did take a look at the traffic report before I came here tonight, so I can offer some insight on that. It's just not in the letter, and we can follow up with that. Key takeaways are, the civil plans are really, really well done. So we've worked with this design firm in the past. Their work is very clean, very professional. So that's a really good start. Usually we have to battle with people about getting the right information on the plan, doing things the right way. So we're starting from a pretty strong point there. That being said, when you have good engineers and good designers, you tend to be able to push the envelope a little bit more. So the result is we have a really, really tight layout. There's not a whole lot of lost space on the site. They've efficiently used everything. The problem with that is if everything doesn't work exactly the way you thought it was, or if changes come, or if unaddressed things arise later, there's really not many places left to move. It also creates problems when you go to construct it. So if everything is already planned out and programmed, well, there's really no residual space left to do the normal stuff that it takes to build a site. So it creates these stresses that heightens our level of sensitivity to all these, what could be minor issues typically, suddenly become major issues just because there's no more space to work in. So that's our principal concern, is that, yeah, they've pretty much used everything that they have. They've also called out a construction phasing, which suggests that they're going to build it in 3 different projects and keep Monahan Crossing open, which even sort of exacerbates that. So you now have a tight project broken up into 3 other smaller tight projects. So again, it just creates all these sort of stresses that I think need to be thought through and they need to give you a little bit more information on how they're planning on constructing this, so you don't have spillover issues on adjacent streets, you don't have people constructing parking on the MBTA station, so things like that to make sure that they've got all these things planned. Drainage, which is always a big issue for us and not necessarily a huge issue for most, but it's sort of fundamental to make sure that there's no off-site impacts from additional stormwater, because what you're doing is taking a site that is all pretty much wooded right now, it pretty much making it all impervious. So you're generating a lot more runoff. That needs to be handled. The folks that designed the work, we've had some dialogue. There's some changes along that we want to have made, and I think they're in the process of doing that. Another big consideration is it's right against the railroad. So our big concern here is a couple things, is that want to make sure that the fence that's there stays there and is in good shape, and that any plans that are considered out there always sort of try to make sure that you're aware of the train track there and you're taking adequate provisions to make sure it stays safe and keep people off the track. As a chief will agree that I didn't see a fire truck access plan in the submittal that we saw. So with this kind of density and this number of parking, really super critical that a fire truck can get in and around cleanly and easily. There are some pretty simple figures that can be drawn to demonstrate that. That gives the chief and gives me the information we need to decide whether or not that's a convenient movement, whether it's a difficult movement, or whether it's something that just doesn't work at all. The other thing too is it's quite a bit of grading, so that if you can imagine, the site's kind of low in half of it, but most of the development is up pretty high. So in some cases there's 3 to 5, in some cases 6 or 7 feet of fill. What would be great to have is just some idea as to how much cut and fill is going to be involved. And the reason for this is everybody pretty much understands the kind of traffic that goes with traditional construction. But when you have a big change in the grade of the site, what people don't usually appreciate is how many trucks come and go to bring that fill in. So we usually like to have just an estimate, so you guys are all informed about the kind of construction traffic that's above and beyond what might be typically expected. One of the other things we usually ask for, and this isn't to suggest that there's an issue with it, but you guys have a hard job, and this is a new development that's at a density that probably was never considered this location. So when you're designing the infrastructure, the water, the sewer systems that serve the neighborhood, they probably didn't contemplate something of this density at this location. So what we usually do is we ask the applicants to give us a memo, small memo, brief memo with a little bit of background information that can help demonstrate that the sewer system and the water system have adequate capacity to handle this proposed development. It doesn't have to be a real heavy lift. People usually say, well, it's clearly got it. Well, if it's clear, then it should be easy to document. And what we find sometimes is that, well, 9 times out of 10, maybe it's fine. But maybe there's one problem the 10th time that, had we not asked, it would have been a problem during construction or when people started to try to live there. Last thing on the civil side is the amenities areas. So they have a pool area and they have a small barbecue area and dog park. They're pretty small. So they look great on the plan. The rendering is wonderful. But just keep in mind, the dog park is the size of 3 parking spaces. It's probably just big enough to fit Amy's dog by itself. And the open lawn area is probably about 10 parking spaces. So pretty big development, not a whole lot of open space available to people, so just keep that in mind. We also looked a little bit at the wetlands, so there are wetlands on the site. They are planning on filling a good portion of the wetlands. Now that's allowed within certain limits. But in Massachusetts, if you fill more than 5,000 square feet of what's called bordering vegetated wetland, that can't be done at the local conservation commission level. That's got to be elevated to DEP and get a variance from DEP. And usually you don't get that, right? That's a hard one to get. Right now they show over 5,000 square feet of wetland fill, but they're contemplating one of those wetlands being what's called an isolated wetland, which isn't subject to that same limit. We were looking at it, it's we could see it both ways. So what we're recommending is that they at least have a dialogue or some sort of coordination with the Concom to settle those things down before going much further, because if they can't fill that one big, or I shouldn't say big, it's about 5,000 square feet. There's a wetland on one side of the Abington crossing. If they can't fill that, then it really forces a lot of substantive changes to their plan. And then to close out in traffic, again, similar, we took a look at that report today, really well done, really clean, very neat. We love when people organize their thoughts and write clearly, because it makes our job easy. One of the things I took away was a lot of the intersections around there are not great, right? They have a lot of traffic in certain peak hours of the day. Project's not huge in contrast to how much volume's going through those intersections, but they will change it a little bit. So the report addresses them, but maybe we have to have a little bit more dialogue about what additional things could be done, because they did do what's called, they're offering to do an optimization effort, where they go out to the signals, I presume, and try to reconfigure them to make them work better. Didn't really see in the report whether they expect that to help or how much they expect it to help. So we'd like to see a little bit more detail on that. The other thing they didn't speak at all about was the railroad crossing. So you've got now a new sort of traffic generator right near a railroad. There was nothing in there about whether that railroad is in good, the crossing is in good, safe operating condition. It looks to be. I took a look at it on Google, and it looks like everything there is up to date and good, but it would be good to have it in their report that this railroad crossing is adequate for public safety. And then the last thing is the parking numbers. So right now they're at about a 1.6 parking spaces per unit. This is a fantastic site in terms of, if you're going to have density somewhere, this is a great place to have density, because it's right next to the train station. So what we'd hope to see is that would manifest itself as reduced parking. But usually we see these kind of projects parked out at 1.5 to 1. So I was a little surprised that they were still at 1.6 to 1 when it's so perfectly located adjacent to the T station. So maybe have a little bit of discussion there. Maybe perhaps that gives us the extra flexibility that we want later, that an erosion of some parking spaces maybe not the end of the world. So if they have problems, we can lose parking spaces and compensate that way. But it did seem a little bit high. And then just the last final thing, and this is, we always say this, right? Where are you going to put the snow? It's like when every site's built out, like, because usually when you have zoning and you have setbacks and you have all things like that, these places to put snow sort of take care of themselves. But under 40B, where you really can go out to the outer limit and everything gets programmed, well, all you have is a lot of parking and a lot of snow generated, but nowhere to put it. So you have to have a dialogue, have to have some plan in place, have to have some sort of expectation as to what you're going to do with that. And my sense is that they're going to say, well, we'll just remove it off-site. But that's a good dialogue to have, so that they're on record saying that, we're not going to put it in the wetlands, we're not going to put it in the railroad, we're not going to put it in the MBTA station. So you just have some dialogue with regard to that.
Any questions for John?
Well, yeah, the traffic study, to me, it seems like it's incomplete, because when they did the study, that road was closed. One of the main roads were closed. So how can they have a study on when the road is being, the construction on the road and the road's closed and people are avoiding that road in Chestnut Street? They did all new piping there when they were doing this report.
Okay.
So people were avoiding it. I was avoiding that street because it was a dangerous street to go down. So I don't understand how they could do an impact traffic study when half of Chestnut Street is closed.
So what we'll do is, my remarks tonight are just sort of my rough remarks based on reading it today. I'll have our traffic people review a whole report.
Yeah.
I'll bring that up
They
to them
really,
just
I
to
mean,
make sure.
you'll probably get a hold of DPW and get this scheduling on what they did on Chestnut Street, because, again, to me, this report, as nice as it looks and everything, the road was closed, the road was worked on, they were doing pipes, they were doing storage, whatever. People were avoiding Chestnut Street just for that reason.
Summer Street.
I apologize. Did I say Chestnut Street?
Chestnut, you're the wrong side of town.
I'm sorry about that. They get
That's something to
so,
do with the woods? I don't know.
all right, I'm sorry.
And actually, you bring up, so one of the other thoughts I had too is I I didn't
Summer
see.
Street.
They put all their traffic on Summer Street?
Yes, yes.
And I was curious as to why they sort of ignored the fact that people are going to go north to Summer Street, I mean, Center Street,
Well,
so.
I apologize. I mean, I meant Summer Street, I'm getting ahead of myself, yeah. But yeah, that's the way I look at this report, okay? I mean, someone want to bring up. And are they covering up the pond that's there, the little pond? The little retention pond?
So as you enter from Summer Street, there's water on the right, that's staying. There's a little water on the left, that's staying. As you go up Monahan Crossing, on the right-hand side, in the middle of the, sort of the wooded grass area, there's a small depression
Right.
that they're planning to fill.
They're gonna fill.
She's got it colored perfectly.
So this is what they're keeping.
On Summer Street.
And I think this is the pond on Summer Street.
Right,
It is,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're keeping this, but they're filling in this, and this is the one that's in question.
Oh, okay.
Because if this is
All right.
BVW, they.
Because I thought they were filling in this right here.
No, they're leaving this alone, but then this is replication next to it. They are filling up top, up here.
All right,
So whatever's blue, they're filling, whatever's pink is replication,
okay,
and the green are the wetlands,
all right.
and the yellow is the amount.
And I apologize again.
And I couldn't figure out the 100-foot buffer on your plans.
Can I ask, is there an environmental impact study done on this or not?
There is,
Trigger
there-
MIPA?
I wouldn't think
They
we
have-
trigger
yeah, I
MEPA.
don't think so. I don't think they.
It doesn't trigger, I mean,
I mean, they
they're,
have to go through MIPA for under 40B, but not like an EIR or anything. I don't think they would trigger it.
Because we're less than 10 acres,
Yeah.
the vehicle trips.
I mean, basically what you're saying is true about you're taking a small piece of land per usual and shoving as much as you can in there.
Yeah, and that's, our job is to make sure that when they do the shoving,
Right.
they're not doing 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
And I correct myself, Summer Street.
You should knock it off. You're forgiven already.
So Amy, what was your question again? To the developer?
My question is, are these?
Amy, I apologize, if I may, Chair, just because Sean hasn't got a chance to review traffic, so I'm assuming we can get into that a little bit more detail
Yeah.
once he has. So I just wanted to quickly address Richard's concerns about the traffic report quickly. And then we can jump back into this civil. Thank you.
I just wanted to address the traffic count concern. When we were here in December, I said I was looking for a date to try and do the traffic counts when the road was open. I heard the board's concerns. I heard the public's concerns about the road being closed. So what I did was I used 2019 counts that were provided by MassDOT, excuse me, that were on file with MassDOT. So they were pre-COVID, everything was open, schools were open, normal count condition. MassDOT allows us to use counts that are up to 2014 in age, but we didn't go back that far. They had 19 counts, and that's what we used as our base year, and then built from there. So we didn't use the 2020 counts at all, or the 2021
Okay,
counts.
is that because before they do construction, sometimes they put a line across there and they do a count? Is that what I'm?
Well, no, this was from they were doing monitoring counts at these intersections. MassDOT and the Old Colony Planning Council does counts routinely at their intersections. So that's where these counts came from that I used in the report. So I did not use COVID counts.
Thank you.
And the answer why we didn't go any north, because the MBTA lot is private. It's not a public street, so we don't have any legal access through that lot. So that's why we didn't put anything through that lot. I know some people might use it, and I can't say that we can stop them, but we don't have any legal access through the MBTA lot.
So Monahan Crossing, you're not allowed to go through the MBTA lot, or?
Correct, it's not a public street through the MBTA lot. That's the MBTA's property.
Okay. But no, Monahan Crossing isn't a public street either, it's a private road, right?
It's a private road.
Owned by the current owner will be the developer.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So does that mean that the truck turning radius and everything is only on the site. You're not considering that the fire truck can go through the MBTA parking lot?
I'll jump in. So for the record, Phil Cordero from Allen and Major Associates. For the information that we submitted for the application, the fire apparatus plan was focused only on the site that's on the screen. Certainly, Monahan Crossing is a fairly linear roadway. The fire truck can certainly make it from Summer Street into the MBTA lot through current Monahan Crossing. But our obligation under the apparatus profile is to get them around the site, let them circumnavigate around the buildings and around the parking field. So our plan is only focused on this plan in this area that you see.
Was there a truck access plan set? I didn't see it.
Yeah, so probably, Sean, what happened is the original submission did not include one.
Okay.
It was supplemented later in January with a plan after consulting with the chief through conversation in December. So there is one in the record.
Okay.
We can get it to you. I'm sure Cassie or Amy could get it to you, and you can comment further on it, for sure.
I don't think I have it.
Okay. Can you, Cassie, are you able to confirm you do have it in the file? I know we submitted them.
You could, Phil, just
You got it, too.
send it to me and copy Cassie and.
Yeah,
Yep.
then we'll make sure it's on there. I don't recall seeing anything from you.
Sure, sure. No, it was a discussion item that actually came up at the 5 o'clock hour just prior to our December meeting. We actually had brought it with us to the meeting. We were able to look at it very, very quickly. Subsequent to that meeting, we actually went in and we didn't meet with the chief, but we met with Mr. Glynn and one of his associates. I apologize, his name's escaping me at the moment. And actually went over the fire truck turning plan and then formally submitted it to the board through Cassie shortly afterwards. So we'll coordinate. It exists. Yeah, we talked about it. So I'm here, obviously, Sean brought up some great points. We're happy to talk through them. We really want to lay out the framework as to how we're going to deal with the issues that he's raised, whether they are huge issues or solvable issues. We'll get there. But I think I jumped up simply because there was an immediate question about buffers to the wetland area. And I just wanted to address that very quickly because it's very easy to address. So our wetland area is the pond right along Summer Street here, the existing pond. And then we have a BVW wetland system that goes out to a culvert into the municipal drainage system here at Summer Street. And it comes back into the site around just below Monahan Crossing and then closes back on itself. And then conveniently, this isolated vegetated wetland area here, which is actually shaded on this plan, those are our 3 wetland areas. So we've identified 100 feet off of those, which is the jurisdictional area for conservation, is designated by this dashed line here.
So my question was just, it's essentially that whole half of the site, right?
So it's bracketed here, and then the other line actually follows through here. It gets a little cloudy because of all the development, but it's based off of the 100-foot here. So that would all be permitted through Conservation Commission, and we're prepared to engage on that immediately because step one that we need to do, we obviously needed to file this application with the board, start the discussion, get Sean's opinion, get the feedback from the various consultants. But we obviously are going into the Abington Conservation Commission to get these wetland resource areas, which we've asserted certain things on the plan in terms of filling them and replicating them. We need to go through and start that process with the Conservation Commission. Step one is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. So what they're going to do for us through that process is we will determine the classification of these. So right now, our wetland consultants, this lower system on the westerly portion of the site, bordering vegetated wetlands, it borders the waterway that goes through the culverted system here. The upper one, or I guess the easterly side of Monahan Crossing, is an isolated wetland system. Each one of those have different protection and performance standards, and we have to go through the motions on that. And then the pond is a pond with a bordering vegetated wetland area just on the outer limit of it. Again, different protection and performance standards. We'll be going through those with you.
What about the concern as far as DEP and the exceeding 5,000 feet? And
So Mr. Reardon is absolutely correct. So to pursue the filling of the area in here, we have to pursue a Mass DEP permit to authorize that. So what we'll put forth in there is the environmental concerns that this member had asked, are we doing an environmental study? And the answer to that question is no. But we will obviously put forth the determination of what this wetland area is and its function, whether it's a vital function or an insubstantial function, and then propose the filling and the replication of it to maintain the performance standards under the Act, and that gets filed with Mass DEP. Yes,
Thank you.
certainly, certainly.
So there's no other wetlands here at all, just those sections that, right here?
Sir, just those three, through the chair to answer the gentleman's question, just those three that I've highlighted, the westerly system, the easterly isolated area, and the wet pond, the stormwater pond that's part of the municipal system. Those are the only ones. That's correct. And Amy's plan is spot on, obviously, as I look at it with the color coding. The pink represents the replication to make up for the blue that we're filling in. The green stays unaltered in all cases. Yeah.
When did you get Sean's report? Just recently?
We got it today.
So
We got
you
it today.
You haven't had a chance to sit down and look at it in depth?
We've had a great opportunity to go through it today. We are familiar with Sean and his review. We're professional peers in the industry, so and we had occasion to speak prior to him issuing the report. We wanted to get sort of a high altitude review, as to what the quick topics were. Where was he focusing? What did he see upon first review? And he's written that out for us, and he's given us that guide map that we're going to address those comments for you. So we've reviewed them. We can certainly, at the board's discretion, walk through every comment if you'd like tonight, and we can talk to you about the gist of his comment and how we plan to respond to it. Or with the board's authorization, we will work together, the applicant's team, the town's consultant, kick around the issues, and we'll come back with a revised package and a response to comments letter that outlines how we address those comments for the official record, accompanied by a set of plans. So that's obviously at the discretion of the board. But what I will give is just a quick bullet point summary just to affirm a couple of things that Sean raised. Construction phasing of multiple buildings relative to a dense site. We will put together information as to what the construction program looks like, how that process is maintained relative to keeping that roadway open for the traffic that wants to go to the MBTA station. Drainage, that's the world we live in. We'll crunch the numbers. We'll talk about groundwater mounding, separation of the water table, areas, breakouts, all of those things. They're all quite typical. Again, happy to discuss them with the board. Sometimes the board just wants to hear from the consultant that thumbs up, it's good, and that's what we'd endeavor to do. We are very much aware, of course, of the MBTA. We're aware of their fence. We're aware of their fence as it encroaches on portions of our land. So we will work with them on ensuring that fence remains and is safe and is protected, certainly during construction, and there's no areas of it that fall or allow access to the MBTA. That will be on us to deal with.
Will you remove the encroachments?
So the conversation that we have to have with the MBTA is, first, to make them aware of the encroachments, and two, to determine if the encroachments need to be moved. If it's in their best interest to move them, if they authorized removal, it needs to be a coordinated effort. What gets a little hairy is obviously opening up the right-of-way to an active commuter rail line. We would prefer to leave the fence there if we can and not introduce a construction logistics element of opening that up, having to coordinate with the rail schedule, get the fence in and out, close it up. If it can stay, we'd work around letting it stay. And this plan respects it in its current position without relocation.
Is there any plan for just aesthetic purposes doing a different fence along your property? Or?
No, we were keeping it as it is, but you raised an important point in the letter. We'll take a closer look at it, but there are no plans at this point to upgrade that fence. We've had a lot of dealings with the MBTA in the past. We've proposed different things to them. They are pretty cut and dry in terms of their chain link fence approach. We've proposed putting the privacy slats in, taking down the fence, putting up wood fencing. In our experience, they've tend to fallen back on the standard is the standard, and let's keep it that way, but we'll look at it, Sean, and we'll report back.
There's nothing that precludes you from putting a fence on your property, however you see fit, right?
We can do it, through the chair, we could do a double fence, if you will. A chain link fence remains, and then we could put another fence in front of it if we wanted. We just have to think about that annual space between two fences, however narrow that may be. But that's something we could look at, for sure. Yeah. Fire truck plan, we had occasion, as I mentioned, to meet at the chief's office. The chief, unfortunately, wasn't able to join us. So we walked away with some really valuable feedback from his team that we haven't made any modifications to our plan. We wanted pending comment from the board's consultant and further comment from the board. And we're taking their comments and their concerns under advisement, and that'll be packaged up in terms of what we can do. We also, the same day, as Sean alluded to, he wants to hear about water and sewer, and as do we. So just prior to meeting with the chief's team, we sat down with the DPW director for sewer, and we also sat down with the director for the Abington Rockland Joint Water Works. We talked about sewer capacity, we talked about water capacity, we talked about the ongoing hydraulic study that's happening in the town, the Mass DEP water withdrawal permits, and how all of that swirls together in terms of making sure service is provided for this site. So that is ongoing, but we can certainly document that conversation for the benefit of the board that has happened. And then lastly, snow storage, message received. It is a built-out site. We have very limited area of snow storage. One of the things that I can assert, and certainly the owner's here to assert it from his voice directly, is their precise property management of these developments, which they build and they own. So a lot of the amenity spaces that Sean pointed out in terms of size, from their experience, it's appropriate. The parking from their experience is appropriate. The snow that has to be managed on this site, we would look to, if the parking is not fully utilized, we would certainly use the parking if we can. If not, and Sean pointed out, we would go on record with a condition that any snow management needs to be hauled away from the site. We need to certainly make sure all of these roadways are clear because they are part of the fire circulation. So that is our obligation first and foremost. And if that means hauling the snow off, it certainly is what we will do. Certainly under no circumstances, we will not pile snow into the wetlands. We will not pile snow where it goes into our stormwater systems and ultimately in the wetlands. We get those rules hard and fast, and we'll abide by those, of course. So that's where we are. Our next steps for us, obviously I've sort of morphed into a response in terms of some programmatic design here, is to continue our discussions with DPW. We have to conduct a fire flow hydrant test out here. We haven't been able to do it due to weather. We met with them early in the year. Today's great, but we didn't put it together as quickly as we would like to have. So that's coming. And that helps analyze the hydraulic model here with the town's consultant for the water capacity. We have probably multiple more conversations with the chief and his team. Obviously, we look for feedback now that the vehicle circulation plan has been submitted. We'll confirm that tomorrow, and we'll get it to everybody here, and keep everything going. And certainly, Conservation Commission, because the wetland issues raised have to be addressed, and the Conservation Commission's voice needs to be heard for this board, so we can do that. So, happy to answer any questions. Did you want to walk through the letter here this evening? I don't know if the board had occasion to review Sean's letter, or we can...
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Are you going to respond to each one of his points?
We will.
Is that the process that you want to follow?
That is the process that we typically follow. We want to make sure that whatever communication exists between he and I is documented fully for the benefit of the board, so you can paper trail what we've changed on the plan. So ultimately, hopefully we get to the situation Sean says, this plan looks good, they've addressed their engineering comments, and you know what we've changed in order to accommodate that at the request of the board.
He raises 29 different points, so each one of those will be answered by you.
Yes, sir.
I think that's the better way to go.
What typically works really well, and the way we usually handle it is, so that we number every comment.
Yeah.
And every comment stays that same number throughout the entire process. What we'll do is, as those comments get addressed or responses come in, we'll track that. If it closes the comment with a recommended condition or something like that, then that comment will fall away. And eventually, that entire list will be comment resolved with a date of the communication that it was resolved, so that we can go back and when we're drafting the decision, we can go back, see the date it was resolved and whether it was resolved with a recommended condition.
Okay.
I expect I will issue more comments as subsequent information comes in. They'll be added to the bottom. They'll get new numbers so that that comment 1 will be comment 1 forever. Comment 2 will be comment 2 forever. That you're not going to bounce around. So that way, everything has a really good record and a really good history.
Okay,
Quite typical, we're prepared.
I do
for
have
that.
one comment.
Yes, sir.
Based on what Sean was saying, and what our role is to try to not put 10 pounds into a 5-pound sack. This seems to me, right now, the way it is putting 10 pounds into a 5-pound sack. And I think we said that last time. It's a very, very dense development. So just for your information, I think you ought to just maybe take another look at it and see if there's something else you can't do to
So
make it less dense.
Adding on to that, are you filling this wetland for 6 parking spaces?
There's the wetland filling along the southeasterly property line, that corner.
But
yes.
the purpose is simply for the 6 parking spaces?
Yes.
Correct?
And you needed those, correct?
Because of the
believe I
density.
asked you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, to meet our preferred parking demand. Obviously, there's some numbers raised here tonight because we are adjacent to the MBTA. Could those numbers go down? We have an empirical data set that we would like to meet for Wood Partners' benefit, and that's what this plan does. In order to achieve that, we have that filling.
But if the density were reduced, then those you wouldn't necessarily need. Those would be the first parking spots to go away, correct? If the density were reduced.
If the density were reduced, obviously the parking demand goes away. Whether or not those are the first spaces, obviously environmentally, we would look at those as the first to go back to the natural condition. That's to be determined.
And then are you proposing any fencing around the replication area or the wetland? I mean, obviously not down here, but right here, because, I mean, you're right up against buildings.
No, we're not proposing fencing.
How are you going to keep intrusion out of the wetlands?
So wetlands are a natural feature.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking to restrict people going into the wetlands. Site management will keep the trash out of the wetlands, keep the debris out of the wetlands, but we feel the wetlands are actually a complement to the site. People will walk through the wetlands to the extent they can. I acknowledge it's a small site. There's not necessarily very far for them to go.
People can't walk through wetlands. They can't walk through resource areas.
They can't even walk next to them anymore because you've got everything.
We'll find a way, but the point is, we are not looking to restrict people from those environmental features. There's no provision that they can't walk through there, they can't walking trails, whatever. I'm not
Dredge
tagging
filling
this
and
as an
altering. I mean, you can't do either. You can't do any of that.
I mean, do you have enough dumpsters here for this project? It
There's
seems,
2. There's one. Yeah,
Is that
that's
enough
right.
for all-
It doesn't seem like.
it's just something I'm bringing up, because I see only 2. And how do you really do that? How do you take a pond and drain it out and then build something on top of that? How does that work?
So it's not a pond,
Okay.
just to be clear. It's a depression in the land
Okay.
that the natural runoff goes through there. It collects. It either evaporates, gets absorbed by the plants, or it recharges through the ground. So it's not a pond. So this is a pond. You go out there, there's water in there
Yeah, I always
almost
saw,
all
yeah,
of the
I've
time.
seen that, yeah.
Right, so this is really just an earthen depression. Because we're going to make alterations around it, we're going to change the drainage pattern, and we'll mitigate the changes in the drain pattern with the drainage that we're proposing for the site, the closed drainage, the recharge piping, et cetera. So we're then simply filling in that earthen depression.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board at this point? If not, I'm going to see if there's any.
I just agree with the chairman that it's a big project, a small piece of property with a big project planned in it, so it's very tight.
I did have one thing I'm just curious about is, I know they've done vehicle studies. Is there any need to do pedestrian or bicycle studies? Because the target population for this is likely to have at least some young people that would do that. And I'm guessing a lot of them would walk through the BTA
Right?
or bicycle, and Island Grove is over there, and then, shopping up Center Street. I just worry about traffic, pedestrian and bicycle safety.
It actually was one of my bullets.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't mention it.
Okay.
So there wasn't really much dialogue or much discussion of it in the report. There was one little snippet about, I think it's part of a TDM measure, but yeah, I think it's worthwhile. The thing I was looking at, in terms of connectivity, I didn't see a whole lot of target areas that people would walk to that we could say, all right, could you analyze this? There is the senior center nearby, there's a dog park at the senior center.
Yeah.
So perhaps to there, but it didn't seem like any sort of area of concern for us. I mean, it would be good for the traffic study to address what the pedestrian movements might be and when any associated issues might be, but we didn't see any obvious things glaring at us as to that needed to be addressed.
You brought up a good point about illegal parking, too.
Yeah, that's going to be a bear. I mean, I just, particularly on the parallel stalls on the street,
Yeah.
those are just asking for people to park. But, I mean, people that run facilities like this, they can deal with it, but certainly, back to my other point, when you have everything maxed out to the last square foot, there's just nothing left you can do except live with it. And that's really what we're trying to avoid, is situations where, well, the die is cast, we can't do anything about it now. Now's the time to say, do we need to create some breathing room? Do we need to create some areas of relief? Do we need to be more respectful in other areas? Now's the time to have that conversation. And then I would ask too is, when you're talking about fire trucks too, it's not just access. They gotta respond. So they need a place for their trucks to stop that doesn't
Set
stop
up.
parking.
It's
They
set
need a
up.
place for their outriggers to go. They need a place to, God forbid,
See that?
fight a
See
fire.
this right here? This is
So
the actual fire.
there's just
That came in
no
the packet.
convenient space to do that right now. So just be sensitive to that
That's
as
the
well.
biggest one right there. That's a tower.
Anybody else have anything from the board at this point? If not, anybody in the public have any comments? Chief?
Thank you. Captain Cotter, I may be deferring heavily for you because Captain Cotter, my fire prevention officer, was at the meeting. I was not able to attend the meeting when they met with you. A couple of questions I have. I'm a little concerned about the terminology, and I may just be interpreting this wrong, but I'm just looking for clarification. When you noted that you are going to document the conversation you had with the fire department, what exactly does that mean? Because that can mean two different things. To me, it could either mean, yep, we had a conversation with the fire department. Or does that mean you're actually going to address some of the issues that were verbalized by my deputy chief and my captain? So that would be step one, question one. Yep.
Through the chair, I'm happy to answer it now. We're happy to document exactly what we spoke about, and if there are modifications to be made to the plan. We talked about water and hydrant locations and circulation and parking relative to outriggers, so we can document all of that. Chief, the reason we haven't done that to this point is we know your peer review consultant was on the case, and oftentimes the consultant may absorb your comments into their letter, and it was a question of whether that happened or not, and then we would simply address it through their letter.
And I can add, I will not sign off until you have everything you want.
Okay. Thank you. And again, this is part of the process. I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear on this as we go. Because I think the next thing we should do, and it sounds, Cap, like it was more like a verbalization. We didn't really document some of these because I think we assumed that they were, and they were going to come back to us meeting some of these. I haven't heard any of that tonight. And it could just be a misunderstanding. They may have thought you were going to do that. So if you want, the fire department can certainly, we'll begin documenting exactly the items that we had, because I think you get a lot done, and we thought we did. There was still some questions where, Cap, you want to come on? Where we didn't really get answers to it, but, at these early stages, we may not really be looking for concrete answers from either side. One of our biggest concerns is the same theme that we're hearing tonight, is this is an absolute tight place, and there's really absolutely zero room for error. We did have an initial fire
apparatus turning plan, and there were a couple of tight places on that. I'll let you talk in a moment on that, Cap. And that's just on what we would call a blue sky day in May with no snow. Now we start getting snow like we have now. We had a fire just last week. There was a tragic fire in town. And because of just the snow on either side, that main road that we have in town was narrowed down to really one lane. And we couldn't pass any apparatus past that. It did not affect in any means the outcome of that fire, but it did affect the firefighting. So as we have, second alarm vehicles coming in, from different towns, they're literally walking almost a city block carrying all of their equipment. That is a single-family home, and that occurred just a week ago. A project like this, if that main Monahan Road, and one of our biggest concerns is there's parking on both sides of that, at least in front of the two buildings, that narrows that down almost to an inoperability standpoint. Just for an ambulance and an engine to get by, we may or may not be able to pass one vehicle over another. And once that first vehicle stops, every vehicle behind that at that point, you're just forming a parade. And if I have to get anything up there, it's all being carried, or that really affects what we have to do. Cap, can you just, if there's anything I've missed in that meeting, feel free.
So we did get the apparatus study plan. That was presented to us. That was the first time we had seen it. It hadn't been formally submitted to planning, so we didn't get to keep a copy of that. A couple of concerns that we voiced were between A and C, that parallel parking which you brought up. As we know, people are going to double park, and that's a huge concern with us. Our truck's 8 feet across, each outrigger's 6 feet, so we're taking about 20 feet if we have to throw the ladder on our ladder truck. There's very few, there wasn't much room for error, so we had talked about possibly eliminating one side of the parallel parking. They said they were going to look at it. Also, the apparatus plan, the computer allowed the apparatus to turn around this complex. That was the computer turning a truck. We're human. We're not going to be optimizing as much as the computer is. Between buildings A and B, especially on the east side, it was tight, especially where the curbing comes out. We had some concerns about that, about how tight it is. Again, that's perfect conditions. Snow, illegally parked cars, that's definitely going to affect our operation within the complex. There was a couple of concerns that we had a couple of issues that we had voiced.
Sprinklering of that outbuilding?
The sprinkling of the outbuilding we talked about, we were told that the sprinkling of the outbuilding to the east of building B was going to be sprinkled. It's going to be a double bay parking garage, and then just the roof sprinklering that we had some concerns about. That the attic spaces were going to be sprinkled, whether they're going to be dry or wet systems. We wanted some clarifications on. And also the plans were showing a peaked roof. We had come to find out that actually may become a flat roof with the machinery inside the flat roof. So it's just something we want to look at. We have the equipment to get over parapet roofs, stuff like that, but kind of can complicate our operations.
Careful, so the hydrants, so we're going to try to eliminate that as possible.
Yeah, so the other concern that we had is our plan only originally showed a couple hydrants. There were some hydrants on the map that were kind of buried in the detail of the map. The maps to the east of Building A and to the south of Building B, the Building C, were dead-ended. So the hydrants come out, they go on a line, they stop. We like to have the hydrants looped. That way we're getting water on both sides of the hydrant. Increases our flow, increases our firefighting capabilities. These buildings are going to be target hazards, so if something, God forbid, does happen, we're going to need the water there to put these, to fight any fire that we see in these buildings. We didn't think it was going to be a big issue, that we could run the pipes back over on the other side, just make a big loop inside the complex. So.
So what we can do, and then if there's any questions, is we'll...
Just let Dave...
No.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say, where you're addressing these things, is there any problem with where the parking structure is behind B? Are you going to be able to get a ladder from, like, say you're in, in this backside to get to any of these inside the L where the, is that the dog park in there?
Hold the dog park.
We can hit it from kind of 3.5 sides. We've got other similar buildings in town where one whole side's, it's not asphalt all around it, so we're kind of familiar with that. We've always got ground ladders.
Ground ladders, yeah.
In an ideal world, it would be like one of the other ones, but that's...
More people, too. I mean, more people...
Well, yeah, no, I was just wondering, just because it looks like there's parking, so I thought, in a real emergency, you'd go in there, but obviously if there's cars in the way, you're not going to be able to get...
We've got that
ground ladders
right up the street now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who wants it again if we don't have to have it?
Right.
Yeah, and that's another role we play is I've dealt with a lot of fire chiefs. They'll do the job, right? So they usually don't complain, and they always say, we'll go there. Our job is to make sure we don't make it any harder on them
Right.
than it has to be.
Yeah, that just looks, that one especially where there's no way to get in there.
Right, I see it.
And that garage too, obviously there's
Kind of
cars
awkward,
and
yeah.
everything there.
In the parallel parking, for an example, you can say you're gonna remove the snow, but if it snows 6 inches and there's people in every one of those parking spaces, there's just no way to do it. You have to remove the cars to remove the snow. So, yeah, my sense is that needs to be a harder thought on that, because literally every square inch of what you see
It's sticking up.
is either parking, is roadway, or sidewalk, or is roof. There's very little, and the green you see is the slope down to a wetland. So almost all of that needs to be cleared of snow. And unless you're gonna throw it on the roof, there's really, you can say we'll get rid of it, but the practical limits suggest it's gonna be a problem.
One of my concerns, and I agree with you 100%, we're hearing they'll take it off-site. That sounds good in a perfect world. Anytime, just the town of Abington, if we decide we're going to clean one of the town centers to truck it off-site,
Couple days.
we're shutting down the road.
Yeah.
And we've got, it's not realistic. I guess the final thing I'll say from the fire department, we will document all of the points that Captain Cotter and Deputy Glynn, when they met with them, and again, I'm sure there's going to be more ongoing as well, and we can get them either through the board or to you, Amy, or to whomever wants to get us, so you can have a formal record of that as well.
Yeah, thanks.
All set? Great, thank you. Anyone else from the public have any comments, any input? Yes, ma'am? Can you come up to the podium, please?
Fran Cronin, 458 Summer Street. This is an issue that I think will go to the conservation also, but I don't know whether any of you have walked the whole length of Summer Street prior to the T station to see the way the backyards are configured. But if you look at Summer Street, you come down Summer Street, there's a very small road called Melbourne Road. And at least 50 years ago, when that was built, they had a drainage issue. And what they did is they put in a drain, but they also put in a huge ditch that runs behind all the houses on Summer Street from Melbourne Road to the T station. And any kind of construction where you stop the flow of that water that comes down, because you have a hill on Plymouth Street that goes all the way down Summer Street, so that water just naturally flows. So if you put all construction on that site, the water is going to back up for the rest of us from the top of Summer Street down to the MBTA station. So that's something I think should be looked at. And we have tons of underground springs that I don't know if you call them depressions, but there's water flowing under the ground on that whole site. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any questions, any comments? Okay. What do you suggest, Amy?
Oh, I would suggest a month. Would that be sufficient? Do you just
Talk about what we do between now and then and what's on for the next agenda?
Yeah. Do you want to do traffic next?
Sure.
Yeah. Can you do that?
In a month, I can have our folks
Okay.
check through the numbers. And I'm sure we can make progress too on other issues by then as well.
Okay. So do you want to,
March 17th?
do you want to do traffic next?
Do you have an architectural firm?
Judy Barrett is going to, she had a conflict tonight, but she is going to get a architectural proposal for peer review from
Okay.
Cliff Bomer. So hopefully she can get that, and we can get something for the next meeting at least.
March 17th would be a month. Is that okay with everybody? or-
This means that there's no traffic.
Is that, would we be addressing traffic at that point in time?
Yes, we can do traffic. We could also, when are you going to the Conservation Commission? Have you filed yet?
We have not filed
Oh,
our
okay.
yet, no. You know, we're going to start to be prepared to address Sean's initial questions. I'm sure there'll be some more that follow up between now and the next hearing, and we'll address as many as we can.
So I think that the main takeaway is perhaps, you know, the density, and perhaps if we could reduce some of the project might be better, I think. But,
On the wetlands issue, we typically defer to the Conservation Commission. We can certainly engage in a dialogue with the applicant about that, but that would sort of be like a sidebar discussion. So we'll, if it helps, sort of get the process going forward while you guys are waiting to file with Concom, we can certainly engage on that and sort of have a dialogue with them about that.
So perhaps we could do traffic, and then we could just do an update. So you could, maybe if you just brought your engineer, traffic, and then Phil.
We'll do full traffic.
Yep.
And then we'll do an update for
Yep.
today's discussions.
So yeah.
Civil and fire.
And then we'll do, and then hopefully after that, maybe we can do architecture and in the, you know, the density and the stuff like that. But I think you'd probably be okay if you just had Phil next time, and then Liz, obviously, if you guys can do the 17th.
Yeah. Great.
Andy, you going to vote to pose it to the floor? Or do we have to do that?
No, because it's still.
It's a continued
Okay,
hearing,
all
yeah.
right. Are we accepting 2019?
I think that's going to come up at the next meeting.
Okay, all right,
When we
good.
discuss
All right.
traffic in depth, and Sean can have his people look
On
at
Summer
that and
Street?
see.
Yep.
Or Chestnut Street, either way.
I'm sorry.
I did, one second, just going through the stuff here that we received tonight. There is a letter here from Center Ave Realty Trust. Did you guys get a chance to look at that? As at the December 16th, this is Center Ave Realty Trust, David W. Smith trustee. At the December 16th, 2021 zoning board meeting, Wood Partners and its representatives stated that a 50-foot buffer zone would remain undisturbed with existing trees on the Progress Street side of its development at 0 Summer Street, Abington Station. This claim is a misrepresentation to the neighbors in town of Abington, as Center Ave Realty Trust has an easement on this 50-foot stretch of land, which includes the right to make it usable as needed. The existence of this easement is well established and clarified in a letter sent by Center Ave Realty Trust to Mr. Scott Lambiase, town manager, on May 5th, 2021, following the mass housing site walk on May 4th, 2021, for the proposed Chapter 40B project, 0 Summer Street. In full disclosure to the community, the claim made by Wood Partners and its representatives on December 16th should be recorded as a misstatement. Thus, we would appreciate having this letter read into the record at the upcoming zoning board meeting. Thank you, David W. Smith, trustee, Center Ave Realty Trust. So I don't know if that's something that you folks are aware of, that there's a 50-foot easement.
So right now it's woods, right? We have to provide an easement. We can remove the woods and still maintain the easement. We thought it was best to maintain that tree buffer for those residents.
I'm confused. If I can't, Center Partners? something?
Center Ave.
Center Ave, if they came in and said, we're gonna cut down our easement and pave it, you would still have 50 feet of trees? Is that what you're saying?
The easement was granted from the prior owner to Center Ave Realty. They don't own the land, Center Ave Realty.
Mark, I think he's asking the opposite question, which is what does Center Ave do with that area? And I think the short answer is, I'm land use counsel for them. I didn't do the transaction title. So we haven't seen that letter, but we'll take a look at it.
Yep, I'll give you a copy.
I haven't seen it either. so
Yeah. No,
I'll get it over to you.
We'll take a look at it and we'll respond.
Okay, great.
Is the easement shown on the plan right now?
Yes, it's done.
All right, so March 17th?
Yes, so while we're discussing this, we also need to schedule what's the other one called? 1015
Plymouth Street.
Plymouth Street.
Yeah,
And I'm assuming you don't want to do them on the same night.
probably not.
It would be pretty late, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
So,
What's the February 10th meeting look like, Cassie? Is there much, I'm sorry, the March 10th meeting? Is it?
It's only got 3.
March 10th would be good. It's within the 30 days.
For the Plymouth Street one?
Yeah. for
Yeah,
Plymouth-
okay, so
Plymouth
when do we
Street.
do
And they
that?
would have time to advertise, right, Cassie,
Um,
for March 10th? If we let them know tomorrow, since they just left.
yeah,
Happened before they
yeah,
left.
they should.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do,
So
can we do
March 10th,
that?
yeah,
You guys
Mar-
okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
March 10th for Plymouth Street,
Great.
and March 17th for you folks
Yeah.
to come back.
I'm going to have Sean get us a proposal for Plymouth Street to look at the changes.
Okay.
We can vote on that
Yeah.
on March 10th.
All right.
And then he can start work once they fund it.
Great. So we get to see you twice in a month. That's pretty good.
Yeah, great. Yay, yay me.
You like us.
I do like you guys.
All right.
I don't like all my boards. Okay.
Anything else?
No, so I
Should we
would
make a
just,
motion to,
You're all set with the 17th?
Yes.
So I will get you this letter. I'll get you the letter. That's all you're missing now, right?
Unless there have been any other submissions, we haven't.
that's
gone-
the only thing, there's something here from the chief, but I think that's just,
No, that's basic.
just,
Basic.
yeah. Sean, yeah.
Okay, so I'll get you this.
So do we have a motion to continue this until March 17th at 7:00 PM?
I'll make a motion to continue this to March 17th, 7 PM.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. And the other one, do we have to make a motion on the March 10th
No,
one? That's
because
just-
you already made a motion, and then, so you're just scheduling it.
Just
So
scheduling it,
Cassie
yeah.
will be in touch with them,
Okay.
let them know.
All right, that's it, right?
You're done.
Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
And we have a motion to adjourn.
Movie adjourned?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, Cassie.